Jake moved slowly through the ruins of the colony, his boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. The air was heavy with smoke, and the smell of fire still clung to everything. He kept his rifle ready, eyes scanning every shadow. The war had ended in this place weeks ago, but danger still lived here. A faint sound caught his ear. It was not the wind or the distant creak of falling metal. It was soft, like a small breath or a whimper. Jake followed the sound, moving between collapsed walls and burnt-out shells of buildings. He came to a half-fallen storage shed, its roof caved in, with pieces of wood and metal hanging down. He crouched low and peered inside. In the corner, half hidden by debris, sat a boy no older than 8. His clothes were torn, and dirt covered his face. His eyes were wide, watching Jake without blinking. He did not move, like he was afraid any motion would bring harm. Jake lowered his rifle and slowly stepped closer. The boy flinched, but stayed silent. Jake knelt down, keeping his voice calm. "It's all right," Jake said. "I'm not here to hurt you." The boy's hands clutched something close to his chest, a small, carved wooden animal. His knuckles were white from holding it so tightly. "What's your name?" Jake asked. The boy hesitated, then whispered Leo. Jake gave a small nod. "I'm Jake." Leo's eyes flicked toward the open space beyond the shed, like he feared someone else might appear. Jake understood. The colony had been enemy territory before the battle, and any soldier from Jake's side was supposed to report or detain anyone found here. But the boy looked like he had been alone for days, maybe longer. Jake glanced around. The place was quiet for now, but too exposed. "You can't stay here," he said softly. "It's not safe." Leo did not answer, but his eyes followed Jake's movements. Jake reached into his pack and pulled out a water flask. He set it on the floor and stepped back. Leo stared at it, then slowly crawled forward and grabbed it. He drank quickly, like he had not had water in hours. When he was done, he looked back at Jake. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. "Come with me," Jake said. "I have food, on a place where you can rest." Leo shook his head at first, fear still in his eyes. Jake waited. He knew forcing him would only make things worse. After a long moment, Leo gave a small nod. Jake helped him out of the shed, careful not to touch him too suddenly. They moved through the ruins together, Jake keeping watch in every direction. The path back to his camp was quiet, but Jake could not shake the feeling they were being watched. At the edge of the camp, Jake stopped and looked at Leo. "No one can know you're here," he said. "Not yet." Leo's eyes narrowed with confusion, but he nodded again. Jake led him to a hidden corner of his shelter, behind some old supply crates. He gave Leo a blanket and a small pack of dried food. The boy sat on the blanket, eating slowly this time, his shoulders still tense. As night fell, Jake sat nearby, cleaning his rifle and listening to the sounds of the camp. He thought about what would happen if anyone found Leo. Orders were clear. Anyone from the other side is to be sent to the holding camps. But something about the boy made that impossible for Jake to consider. Leo finished eating and lay down on the blanket. He still clutched the wooden animal in his hand, holding it close to his chest. Jake watched him for a while, then looked toward the dark horizon. He did not know why this boy was alone, or why he felt so strongly that he had to protect him. But he knew one thing with certainty. He was not going to let anyone take Leo away. The morning light slipped through the gaps in the old supply crates, casting thin lines of gold across the dusty floor. Jake woke early, as he always did, but now his first thought was not his weapon or the patrol schedule. It was the boy. Leo was still curled under the blanket, his small frame hidden except for the dark hair that stuck out at odd angles. The carved wooden animal rested by his hand. Jake moved quietly, heating a bit of water over the camp stove and mixing in some dried oats. The smell must have reached Leo, because the boy's eyes opened slowly. Jake handed him the tin cup. "Eat up, it's warm." Leo sat up and took it without a word. He ate slowly at first, then faster. Jake studied him. The boy's clothes were still dirty and torn. His face had streaks of grime that no child should have to wear. There were small cuts on his hands and arms, not deep, but proof of how long he'd been on his own. When Leo finished, Jake said, "You have to stay out of sight today. There's a supply check. If they find you, they'll take you away." Leo looked down at the cup in his hands. "Where will they take me?" Jake hesitated. Somewhere far. You wouldn't like it. The boy nodded, like he understood more than Jake expected. Later that morning, Jake moved a stack of empty crates to create a narrow space behind them. You can stay here until it's safe, he told Leo. Leo crawled in, holding his wooden carving tightly. Jake pulled a tarp halfway over the crates to block the view. He hated hiding the boy like contraband, but there was no choice. Supply check came just after midday. 2 soldiers walked in, scanning every corner. One of them, Carter, was someone Jake had worked with for years. Everything in order? Carter asked. All good, Jake said, keeping his tone casual. Carter's eyes lingered on the stacked crates. Haven't seen you keep them like that before? Jake shrugged. Keeps the rats out. The 2 men moved on without searching. Jake waited until they were gone before pulling the tarp back. Leo was there, silent and still, like he hadn't even breathed while they were in the room. You did well, Jake said quietly. That night, as they sat in the dim light of a single lantern, Jake tried to learn more about the boy. Where were you before I found you? Leo took a long time to answer. In a big house, he said finally. There were guards. My mother told me to hide when the fighting started. Didn't see her again. Jake's chest tightened. Your mother, she's still out there. Leo looked at him, eyes sharp, even in the soft glow. She's strong. Jake thought about the stories he had heard. In the enemy's main city, there was a queen who ruled with absolute authority. She was feared by her enemies and respected by her own. If Leo was telling the truth, this child was more important than anyone in Jake's camp knew. Does anyone know you're alive? Jake asked. Leo shook his head. Only you. Jake stared at the boy, feeling the weight of that answer. Protecting him was no longer just about keeping a child safe from harm. It meant standing between him and 2 entire armies. Over the next few days, Jake taught Leo how to move quietly, how to listen for danger, and where to hide if trouble came fast. The boy learned quickly, watching Jake's every move. Sometimes Jake caught Leo studying him with a thoughtful look, as if measuring whether Jake could be trusted forever. One evening, Jake returned from patrol to find Leo sitting by the crates waiting for him. The boy stood as soon as Jake entered. You came back, Leo said simply. Oh. Jake knelt, so they were at eye level. I told you I would. For the first time, Leo's mouth curved into the smallest hint of a smile. It lasted only a second, but Jake felt it deep in his chest. The trust, fragile as it was, meant more to him than any victory in battle. He knew then that no matter what orders came from above, he would not let anyone take Leo away, even if it meant turning against everything he once served. The camp was restless that morning. Word had spread that a small group of soldiers had gone missing during a patrol near the river. Jake knew that meant more patrols, more eyes looking where they usually did not. It made him uneasy. Leo stayed close to the crates as Jake moved around the shelter, packing extra supplies into his bag. We might have to leave soon, Jake said. It's not safe here anymore. Leo's fingers tightened around his wooden carving. Where will we go? Somewhere they won't look for us, Jake replied. He was about to say more when footsteps approached outside. He motioned for Leo to stay hidden and stepped into the open. 2 soldiers entered. One was Carter, the other a younger man named Ellis. Carter looked serious. Jake, command wants everyone ready for a sweep. There's talk about an enemy child being seen near the outskirts. Jake kept his face still. Out here, that's a long way from their lines. Ellis glanced at the crates. Orders are to check everywhere, even private quarters. Jake stepped in their path. You know me, Carter. I keep my place clean. There's nothing here. Carter hesitated. Ellis didn't. He moved toward the crates. Jake blocked him with a sharp tone. I said there's nothing here. That drew Carter's attention. He studied Jake for a moment, suspicion in his eyes. If you're hiding something, you're making a mistake. Before Jake could answer, a shout came from outside. A soldier ran past the entrance, yelling about a group approaching the camp. Carter and Ellis moved to see what was happening, and Jake used the moment to slip back to Leo. We're leaving, Jake said. Leo didn't ask questions. He grabbed the blanket and his carving, and Jake led him out through the rear path. They stayed low, moving quickly toward the outer edge of camp. They had just reached the old fence when a voice called out, "Stop right there." Jake turned to see 3 armed soldiers, none of them friendly. The leader stepped forward. "You have the boy? Orders say he comes with us." Jake placed himself between Leo and the soldiers. "He's under my protection." "Not anymore," the leader said. "Move aside." Jake shook his head. "Not going to happen." Soldiers tightened their grip on their rifles. Jake raised his hands slightly, not in surrender, but ready to act. The air was tense, and Leo pressed against Jake's back. Then another voice cut through the standoff, strong and commanding. "Stand down." Everyone turned. A column of riders entered the clearing from the far side, their armor polished and their banners flying. At their head was a woman with dark hair tied back, her presence as sharp as the steel she carried at her side, her gaze fixed on Jake and the boy. She dismounted and strode forward. The soldiers. From Jake's side stepped back instinctively. "Yeah." The woman stopped a few feet away, looking directly at Leo. "Come here," she said. Leo didn't move. He clung to Jake's arm. Her eyes shifted to Jake. "You have something that belongs to me." Jake realized who she was. The queen from the rival territory. The stories had not done her justice. She carried herself with a power that made even armed men pause. "If you are his mother," Jake said, "then you know he's been in danger every moment since I found him. I'm not handing him over to anyone who can't keep him safe." Her jaw tightened. "You dare question me?" "I dare protect him," Jake replied. The silence between them felt like the whole camp had stopped breathing. The queen's eyes moved to Leo again. Duh. The boy's grip on Jake only grew stronger. Finally, she spoke. "Then you will come with us, soldier. And you will prove you can protect him." Jake looked at the soldiers from his own side. None of them moved to stop him. He nodded once to the queen. "Lead the way." With that, Jake and Leo walked beside her as the column turned toward the open road. He didn't know what waited ahead, but he knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead stretched through broken valleys and forests that had seen too many battles. Jake walked beside the queen's horse, keeping Leo close on his other side. Her guards rode around them in a tight formation, their eyes always scanning the horizon. The air was tense, and every sound from the trees made Jake tighten his grip on the rifle. Leo said little, but Jake could tell the boy was watching everything. He kept glancing at his mother, as if trying to be sure she was real. The queen rode tall in her saddle, her eyes fixed forward. She spoke no word to Jake during the first hours of travel. By midday, the group reached the edge of a dense forest. The queen raised her hand and the riders slowed. "We move carefully here," she said. "Bandits hide in these woods." Jake looked at the trees. Shadows between them were deep, and the ground was covered in thick leaves. It was the perfect place for an ambush. He moved Leo closer to him. "Stay beside me," Jake whispered. They followed a narrow path under the dark canopy. Birds were silent, and only the crunch of hooves and boots broke the stillness. Jake's instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. A shout came from the left. Figures in ragged armor rushed out from the trees, weapons raised. The guards moved to block them, but more attackers appeared from the right. Arrows flew, and one guard fell from his horse. Jake pulled Leo behind a fallen tree. "Stay down," he ordered, then leaned out to fire at the nearest attacker. The crack of his rifle echoed through the forest. 2 bandits fell, but more came. The queen had dismounted, sword flashing in the dim light as she cut down anyone who came near her. She fought with a precision that caught Jake's eye even in the chaos. An attacker broke past the line and charged toward Leo. Jake vaulted over the log and met him head-on, slamming the rifle's stock into the man's face. The attacker went down, but another was already moving in. Jake blocked a swing with his arm, pain shooting through it, then drove the man back with a hard kick. More guards joined the fight, and slowly the attackers began to fall back. A final arrow whistled past Jake's head before the last of them vanished into the trees. The forest was silent again, except for heavy breathing and the groans of the wounded. Jake turned to find Leo still crouched where he had left him, gripping the wooden carving. The boy's eyes were wide, but he was unhurt. The queen approached, sword still in hand. She looked at Jake for a long moment. "You fight well," she said at last. "I keep my word," Jake replied. They tended to the injured and moved on, traveling until the sun began to set. That night, they camped in a small clearing. The queen's guard set a perimeter while Jake helped Leo settle near the fire. The boy leaned against him, worn out from the day's events. Later, when the others were resting, the queen came to sit across from Jake. The firelight flickered on her face. "You could have run today," she said. "You had the chance." Jake shook his head. Running would have left him alone. "I won't do that." She studied him like she was trying to read every thought in his mind. "You know who he is, don't you?" "I know enough," Jake said. "Then you know what keeping him safe means," she said. "It is not just about fighting off bandits. There are people who would start a war again just to take him." Jake met her gaze. "Then I'll keep standing in their way." For the first time since they had met, the queen's expression softened. "We will see if you mean that." The night passed without another attack, but Jake stayed awake for most of it, listening to every sound in the dark. He knew the journey ahead would only get harder, but he also knew that nothing would make him leave Leo's side. The walls of the Queen's city rose in the distance, tall and unbroken. After days of hard travel, the sight brought a quiet relief to the group. The guards straightened in their saddles, and Leo's eyes widened as he saw the towers glinting in the late afternoon sun. Jake walked beside the Queen as they approached the great gates. The road was lined with townsfolk who stopped to stare. Some whispered to each other, recognizing the boy at Jake's side. Others looked at Jake with confusion, unsure why a soldier from the other side was walking in step with the Queen herself. Inside the gates, the streets were wide and paved with stone. The air smelled of bread and smoke from the market stalls. The Queen led them to a large courtyard in front of a palace built of white stone. Guards in bright armor stood at every entrance. Jake followed her up the steps, keeping Leo close. In the great hall, the Queen stopped and turned to them. "You are safe here," she said to Leo. "No one will harm you." Leo looked at Jake, his small hand still holding the man's sleeve. "I want him to stay," the boy said. The Queen's eyes moved to Jake. "He has his own place, his own people. I don't care," Leo said quietly but firmly. "I want him here." The Queen hesitated. Jake could see the conflict in her face. She had power over armies and cities, yet her son's words seemed to weigh heavier than any order she could give. That night, Jake was given a guest chamber in the palace. It was more comfort than he had seen in years, but he did not rest easy. He kept thinking about what would happen next. In the morning, the Queen sent for him. They met in a smaller chamber, away from the court and the guards. She stood by a window, looking out at the city. "You saved my son more than once," she said without turning. "You fought for him, even when it put you against your own." Jake said nothing, waiting. She faced him. "I could send you back to your people, or I could keep you here, where you will serve me." "And the boy?" Jake asked. "He will be here," she said. "And if you are as loyal as you claim, you will guard him as one of my own men." Jake thought about it. Going back meant facing questions, maybe punishment. Staying meant living among those he had once called enemies. But when he thought of Leo's hand gripping his sleeve, the choice became clear. "I'll stay," Jake said. The Queen studied him for a moment, then gave a short nod. "Then you will be part of my royal guard. You will answer only to me." Later that day, Jake was given new armor, polished but practical. It felt strange to wear the colors of the rival side, but when Leo saw him, the boy smiled for the first time without hesitation. The days that followed were busy. Jake trained with the guard, learned the layout of the palace, and stood watch at the Queen's side during public events. But his main duty was clear Leo's. Safety came before all else. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, Leo asked, "Will you always be here?" Jake looked down at him. "Okay, as long as you need me." The boy nodded and went back to chasing a ball across the grass. The sound of his laughter carried on the wind, a sound Jake had not heard in the ruins or the road. From the balcony above, the Queen watched them. Her expression was unreadable, but she did not call Jake away. Jake knew there would be dangers ahead. His politics, old grudges, and the shadow of war would not disappear overnight. But he also knew that he was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was a protector bound by something stronger than loyalty to a flag. That night, as the palace quieted and the city lights flickered in the distance, Jake stood outside Leo's chamber, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Whatever came next, he was ready. He would not let anyone take the boy away. Not now, not ever.